Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to The Huddle, the Review.com's weekly high school sports show. I'm Rob Toder, joined as always by Mike Brown. It's hard to believe it's week 5 of the high school football season. We're halfway through, and we're starting to get an idea of where teams are going to fall as we get into the meat of the season. And Mike, let's talk about the Marlington Dukes, because that was probably the game of the week, or the most anticipated game last week. The Dukes against Carrollton, 2 undefeated teams, and Marlington more than passed the test.
They sure did. You know, they throttled Carrollton, who was undefeated going into that game, and Carrollton had blown out the 3 previous opponents that it had played, and Marlington just took that away from them early. They decided the issue early. Sampson, the running back, had a great game, 4 rushing touchdowns, rushed for 157 yards. And Chris Pennell, I believe, threw for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns in that game, Rob.
Now, the Dukes travel on the road, and this is sort of a trap game because the Salem Quakers are a pretty good football team. They go to Riley Stadium, coming off a big emotional win that everybody got all the media attention in Stark County last week. So, what's the key for the Dukes in this game? Because Salem is still, they were a playoff team last year.
Right. I was surprised, but Salem got beat at Canton South and got beat decisively last week. That was a stunner when that score came in. I had to do a double take on that, Rob. But I think, Ron Johnson, we've talked about, as a great coach, and I think he'll rally the troops this week. And like I said, the game's at Riley Stadium. So I think Marlington just has to stay within itself, do what it does best. I think it's gotten great play from its lines. Obviously, it's gotten great play from its running back, Sampson, and Chris Pennell is having a fantastic year at quarterback. So I think they just need to keep doing what they're doing. Salem, on the other hand, has some youth in spots this year, and I think that it's a process for them. So, I think Marlington's a solid favorite in that game, but like I said, the game's on the road, so you never know, Rob.
Yeah. Another team going on the road after a big win last week is West Branch. They got back on the winning side with a win at Minerva, but now they've got to go to Carrollton, who, as we've said, did not play well against Marlington, and I'm sure they're going to be ready for bear.
Right, and I think this Carrollton team is a very good Carrollton team. I just think Marlington was that much better last week, but Carrollton has a very nice football team. I think they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the NBC this fall, and that'll be a tall order for West Branch. I know West Branch has had the whammy on Carrollton the last, I believe they've won 3 or 4 straight against Carrollton. But I would think Carrollton would be a favorite in that game Friday night, even though West Branch has a really nice offense. But I think they're going to have to play well on the defensive side, and they've had some issues with that. They didn't against Minerva, who's a young team. But in the prior 2 weeks prior to that, they had some issues, especially against Southeast and against Crestwood. So they need to shore up that run defense to be able to get their offense on the field.
Yeah. The Alliance Aviators come back home after that loss to Louisville last week, and they play Kansas South. This might be the most even matchup of the weekend.
I agree with that. Yep.
In the NBC. Both teams are young, struggling to find an identity, and that could be an entertaining game.
Right. I look for this to be a close game. I think a wide-open game. I think a lot of scoring. I can see that in this game, Rob. They both have some talented playmakers on both sides, so it should be exciting for the fans to watch that one.
And, of course, the 4th game in the NBC this week, that old rivalry, Minerva and Louisville. And as we said, Minerva kind of young, Louisville, young also, but they've got the advantage of some depth there.
Right, and they're still Louisville. Louisville is still Louisville. They're always good. Even when they're young, they're good. I think the Leopards and Minerva, my heart goes out to Lance Willison. He's a great coach. I think they just need to stay the course in Minerva with him. He'll get the job done. He's just trying to get his system in place this year, and plus they're a young team, so you have those 2 things, kind of working against them right now. But I think they've got a good hire in Willison, and he'll turn that around. But I think there's going to be some bumps in the road prior to that, and it's tough for a young team like Minerva when you're going to be playing at Louisville. And it's tough enough to play at Louisville, but when you're playing at Louisville, there's an R there. I mean, I will have to look it up, but I bet Louisville has won over 90% of its games at home in the last 10 years. When it's at home, there's a comfort level there for them, and that makes it tough for a road team.
Okay. Another good game this week, Crestwood and St. Thomas. Obviously, Crestwood out of the Portage Trail Conference. And St. Thomas, again, from the frying pan into the fire, they got a big win over their arch rival last week, and now they turn around and play another really solid playoff team.
Yeah, these are 2 outstanding running teams. This game will want to go pretty quickly because I don't think there'll be a whole lot of passing. But you've seen Crestwood, Rob. They've got I believe his name is coming back, Toot, and he's tremendous. He gained I believe over 2,000 yards last year, and he could be on his way between 2,000 and 3,000 yards rushing this year. He's tremendous, and obviously St. Tom has a great running back too, and Nathan Rich. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that game plays out. But in my mind, that is the game of the week. That should be a fantastic high school football game.
All right, turning our attention to the Inter-Tri-County League, Sebring, as expected, struggled a little bit against Columbiana last week. Just a bigger school, and don't ask me to explain the scheduling procedures in the Inter-Tri-County League, but it's on display again this week because Sebring's got to play a team they really have no business scheduling for a league game, and that's East Palestine.
Yeah, I feel for Sebring because it doesn't seem very fair to Sebring. They're playing East Palestine, who's a much bigger school, and this is a good East Palestine team. Sebring's got a good team, but it seems so unfair that they're playing schools so much bigger right now. But that's just the way the Inter-Tri-County League crossover schedules worked out, and hopefully that will correct itself after this year when we'll have some new leagues and things like that. But right now, that's what they're facing. But they are at home Friday night, so hopefully that's going to help them. Nate Martin had a good game last week, rushed for 95 yards. Colton Brown scored their lone touchdown last week. So, and obviously Robbie Rouse is a great athlete for the Trojans. So hopefully they can hang around and maybe have a shot against East Palestine, but they'll have to play well.
Yeah, Bulldogs playoff team last year and looking for the postseason again this year. Also in the Inter-Tri-County League, Western Reserve's 1-3.
Yeah.
Again, a tough non-league schedule. Columbiana and South Range in there. And then they play Wellsville this week. And United travels to McDonald, and that's going to be a tough matchup for the Golden Eagles.
Yeah,
so any thoughts on either of those two games?
Yeah, I think Western Reserve, I think they'll win this week. I think in my mind, they're a slight favorite, but Wellsville's a good football team. But I just know Andy Haight coach teams at Western Reserve, they'll right the ship sooner than later. I mean, they just have too much tradition out there. They've got some youth in spots this year, but I think they've gone through the fires, the toughest part of the early part of their schedule, and I think that's going to help them moving forward.
All right, and in the Portage Trail Conference, Waterloo steps out of the league, and they're going to play host to Lucas, a team from mid-central Ohio, and Southeast is going to host Ashtabula Lakeside. I'm interested to see this Southeast team because they had an impressive win at West Branch on the road a couple of weeks ago, and just see how they can move forward in the league play starting next week, probably.
Right. That's a new opponent on the schedule, I believe, for Southeast, too. I see Southeast as a slight favorite in that game. That should be one of the better games this weekend, too. Ashtabula Lakeside's in the All-American Conference in the large division, so they play schools like Boardman and really a lot more. I mean, they play an incredible schedule. They played Madison already, but they're 1-3. Southeast is 2-2. And I think they've already made some strides this year. They've got some nice athletes on that Southeast team. I got a chance to see them a couple weeks ago. And I think Southeast will be a slight favorite at home this weekend.
Okay, so make sure you check out the Alliance Review all week. We'll have previews of those games and much more. We'll have coverage Friday night of all those games. And so make sure you follow our reporters on Twitter as well, Jeff Zupanik and Mike Keating. And we'll have all the coverage in Saturday's Alliance Review and on thereview.com. So until next week, for Mike Brown, this is Rob Toder. We'll talk to you then.